First off, it's been about 35 years since I've done anything like this, so a little grace would be appreciated. I'm going to start off, I'm going to tell you a story of my youth, and it's a completely true story about something that happened to me when I was a teenager, and then I'll tell you about the parallels between that, what happened to me physically, and later what happened to me spiritually. And hopefully it'll touch you guys, and you'll feel a little bit, and we'll get some results later. But little background: I grew up with the Church of Christ here in town, and I went to their church camp every year at Boiling Springs. And the second to the last day was always a day that we went to Alabaster Caverns, and we would do. We'd go through the cave tour, and then we'd have a little bit of time, and then we'd eat, and then we'd do devotionals in smaller groups. And it was always a wonderful time. I loved the time out there. But the church camp had everything set up so that you really couldn't get into trouble out there. You know, they had people stationed all along the path so that you stayed on those paths and didn't go trying to climb down the cliffs they've got. They had people at the caves, and so you couldn't go past those people in some of the wild caves that were back there. They'd just stop you and tell you, no, you need to go back to the entrance now. And one summer, my cousins came down to visit, and they ended up staying longer than they wanted. So they weren't going to be able to make it back to Enid in the time they wanted to, so they decided just to stay the night. And they'd never been to Alabaster Caverns, and so my parents decided we were just going to make a family day out of it. Go up there, catch the first tour, have a break, eat lunch, a whole lot like we did in church. But there wasn't going to be all those people there to stop us from doing whatever we wanted. So we each had brought a flashlight, me and my brother and my cousins, and we went to these caves that we knew had huge entrances. One of the entrances bigger than this building. And we get in those caves, and it really didn't amount to much. There were cave-ins pretty early on that you really couldn't get deep in those caves. So we come out of the caves a little disappointed because it really didn't get us where we wanted. And we decided we were going to go to the river, but we really didn't have a ton of time now before we were going to eat. So we were just going to come off the path and go down the cliffs right there and get to the river quickly instead of having to follow the path that wound all the way around. And we did. We stepped down off the path, and we weren't off the path very far, and there was a hole in the ground. About 3 feet around. And the three of us started going in, me and my brother and my cousin Ronnie. And she was a little older. She was about 17. I was 13. My little brother was 10. And she could not fit in the hole that we were going into. So I said, well, we'll just go down to the river. And she says, no, that's okay. I'll go back up. It's almost time to eat anyway, and you guys can explore the cave. And so that's what she did. She left, and me and my brother went into this cave. And it was everything we had dreamed that we were going to get to experience when we went out there. Crawled in this cave, and it eventually opened up a little bit. Had side paths we could explore that would eventually end, and we'd come back. There was a rope tied to a tree out front that wound its way, and we kind of just followed that rope through this cave. Completely lost track of time. Came on a part where the ceiling had caved in, but there was room up above and a little bit of room underneath, but the stream that had carved out that cave was also running underneath that boulder. And we tried to climb that boulder a couple times, and you'd slip and slide and fall down. So we got this idea. We would lay down on our backs in the water. The water's rushing right up past our ears, and the boulder's right here as we just hand over hand pulled ourselves underneath that boulder for 30 or 40 feet before we got to the other side of it. And we just thought that, the adrenaline rush just was amazing. We loved it. Absolutely loved it. And we go and we keep going. Eventually, we come to a spot where there's a chimney that goes straight up. And I didn't know what they called it at the time, but basically there was some spot up above that had a crack in the bedrock, and water comes through. And it starts carving what they call a chimney out of the rock underneath. And at this time, they told us where we were in that cave, we were about 250 feet from surface. And so my brother and I, knowing no fear, climbed that chimney all the way to the top. And it was so cool. We had a great time. The dirt underneath that had collected, that had been washed through that crack, and then the roots of the plants were sticking down through the dirt, and you could see soil down there that the plants were clinging to. And we just thought it was the neatest thing in the world. And I reach up to one of those roots and I pull on it. And as soon as I do, all the dirt in this chimney starts falling. And it gets in I hit a clod in my eye, and it hurt. And I reached up now understand, we're 200 feet in the air, holding ourselves in this chimney that's about 2 feet in diameter, holding ourselves up with our arms and our legs like this. And I reach up and pull, and drops it down into my eyes. And when I reach up to rub my eye, my flashlight hits the side of the chimney and knocks it out of my hand. And you look down and you see it bounce about 3 times before the light goes out. And then there's a pause, and it hits the bottom, and it just shatters. That was the first time that I realized that maybe we were in a little bit over our heads. That was the first time that my heart really felt fear in those caves. And my brother still had his light. So we decided, okay, we probably better follow this rope on out of this cave while we've still got a working flashlight. And we did. We got down out, and we followed that rope back. We got to that boulder and decided, well, maybe we shouldn't go under this time where all the water is, and we've only got one flashlight. So we decided we're going to go over this thing. And we do. We climb up to the top and again slide down. It's so slippery. It slides me down. I went first. My brother held the flashlight, and I told him, hey, it's not that bad. You can make it. And so he did. He slid down that boulder, and he hit, and it's wet and slippery, and he loses his footing a little bit, and he goes down and dunks his flashlight in the water. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen complete and total darkness, but that's what it was. And I'm not talking about darkness from when you close your eyes. There was no light. Just a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old in a cave with no light. And I hear him breathing hard, and I know he's scared. And I'm the older brother, so I got to stay calm. It's okay, Travis. Come to my voice. And he did. And we felt around until we felt that rope. That rope was going to be our lifeline. It was going to guide us out of that cave. So we follow that rope, him right behind me, his hand on my shorts. So we begin trying to work our way out of this cave. And something we didn't run into on the way up there. All of a sudden, I fall. And I feel around me what feels like mud and muck. And what felt like, I could only imagine, quicksand up to my chest, but my feet hit the bottom. It was probably just a lot of mud. But to a 13-year-old in total darkness that can't see, trapped in mud to his chest, I panicked. grab the rope and pull and lifting up on myself on the ledge. And Travis comes over and helps me. And neither one of us really know what's going on. Eventually, we get me up out of the mud. And I'm laying there heaving. One shoe gone, lost somewhere. Who knows what. I get myself calmed down. Get Travis calmed down. We say, well, let's go. And we grab the rope and realize it's limp. The rope had broken. We're in total darkness with no flashlight. It's about 50 degrees in that cave, and we're soaking wet, and we're scared, and we're cold, and we don't have anything anymore that we can do. So Travis and I get together, and I said, we got to find a place that's dry and try to warm up and try to rest, and then maybe we can get a plan. So that's what we did. We cuddled together in a spot that we felt like was drier and warmer, and we prayed. We prayed a lot. We sang songs. Every worship song we could think of, we sang. And we started shivering. We couldn't stop shaking. But we sang and we prayed. Then we stopped shaking. Didn't know it then, but I do now. When you enter hypothermia, your core body temperature starts to drop. You start shaking. That's your body's attempt to warm you up. And you'll eventually stop shaking for one of two reasons. One reason is your body temperature starts to come up, so you'll quit shaking. The other reason is your body temperature keeps dropping. And your energy reserves get low enough, your body just says, okay, this isn't working. And it starts shutting you down. You'll eventually get sleepy. And you'll go to sleep. And you never wake up. And that's what was happening with us. Emotionally, physically, mentally, we were done. Unknown to us, our parents are working hard to get us help. We're in the cave, falling asleep. Even as young as we are, we know that once we do, we'll probably never wake up. My parents had called the police, took hours to convince them that we hadn't run away. They had people on horses riding through the area looking for us to see if we were anywhere else. They eventually brought dogs in. These dogs tracked our scent to the cave. And once they knew which cave it was, the park called people who had actually mapped this cave before, said, hey, we got some kids down here, they're trapped in this cave. Can we get you guys to come out and help them? This group of people were out of Arkansas, and they operated in teams of 3. They had 2 teams. At this time, one team was already out mapping caves somewhere else. So it was only one team left. And it turns out that they will not work in anything but teams of 3 for safety reasons. That's what they operate in. Us dumb kids go in teams of 2 with 1 flashlight each, but that's how it works. And one of their members had recently retired and they hadn't replaced him. So this team of two calls up this retired guy and say, hey, there's kids trapped in a cave in Oklahoma. Can you fill in? And he of course said, absolutely. And they get on a plane, fly to Oklahoma City, get driven down to Woodward. And they get there, get to the cave, and find out that only one of them will fit in the cave. The one that would fit is the guy that was retired. So if he doesn't come with them, they can't get in the cave. So they come back up and they say, look, we'll go, but we've got to have 2 other people go with him. And each of you has to have 3 flashlights. Again, dumb country kids, 2 flashlights were good. The adults a little smarter. They're going to go in 3 people with 9 flashlights. They had an EMT standing by for when they found us, or actually 2 EMTs. And one of them was a smaller guy. And he says, well, I'll go. Had a guy that was home from college, just riding horses through the canyons. And he had come up and was standing at the drink table getting a drink. He had come up to swap horses. He wasn't tired. It was 2:00 in the morning, but his horse was. So he was ready to keep going. He was going to go swap horses and heard them looking for a volunteer, a smaller volunteer. And he fit the bill. So they enter the cave in this team of 3, 1 person that knows what he's doing, and 2 people just there to satisfy the requirements. Travis and I are, at this point, fast asleep. From my perspective, all of a sudden, Tommy! What? And Travis had woken me up. How the smaller, younger guy wakes up, I don't know. But he tells me, I heard someone call my name. I said, what do you mean? Like someone far off? He said, no, right here. Right next to me, I heard him. And we listened, and we waited. We didn't hear anything. Eventually, in the darkness and the silence, we drift off to unconsciousness again. And then I heard it. Tommy! Right here. That ear laying in the rock was the only place I heard it. Tommy. And I wake up, and I look around, and I listen, but I don't hear anything. And I shake him, Travis. And he won't wake up. Travis, wake up. And he won't wake up. And then I do hear, far off in the distance, Tommy. Travis. The sweetest sound I'd ever heard in my life was those guys calling my name. But I can't get Travis to wake up. I yell and yell. Eventually they get closer and closer. And Travis finally wakes up. There was finally enough commotion. He wakes up. And the guys get there, and they have these lights, and they're so bright. But it's a wonderful sight to see. And the EMT gets in his little pouch and pulls out one of those Nylar or whatever they are, those silver blankets, and wraps us up. If he's not there, I'm not sure they have the equipment to treat us, to get us out. Because we couldn't walk at that point. And they warmed us up and they told us their story. And everybody's pretty happy at this point. We're all smiles. And Eventually, we start shaking again. And that's when the EMT tells me, hey, that's a good thing. That lets me know your temperature's rising now. You shake and you shake, and then we stop. And he says, okay, that's what I was waiting on. He says, let's go, let's get you guys out of here. And those 3 guys guided us out of the darkness. And we stepped out of that cave, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd spent 13 hours in total darkness. About 16 hours total in that cave. And there's a whole group of people waiting there, helping us, guiding us back up that cliff to the path. And we took that path and walked back up to our loved ones, to our parents, and it became a fun story to tell. Now, what in the world does this have to do with anything God or Jesus? Miss Andrea, Nathan's wife, she would tell our 5th and 6th graders that sin is equal to darkness, is equal to death. And that's what that cave represents. And that whole scenario, I lived again spiritually later in my life. You know, early on, I had my parents, I had my grandparents, I had a lot of people that looked out for me. They kept me on these paths, kept me from going into these caves of darkness. You know, Lord knows if I had used language like some of my friends did, if I took that home, I'd have met Jesus really early. But early on in my life, I had these people looking out for me, keeping me on the path of righteousness. But eventually, I had to make my own decisions. And that big opening in the ground, that little opening that not many people can fit through, for everybody it's different. For some it's addiction, gambling, alcohol, drugs, whatever. Each of us have our own. Satan has his own little lure he likes to put in, that rope he wraps around the tree and sends in the hole. But he makes that hole alluring. For me, it was when I joined the Army. Joined the Army, I spent 4 months in basic training. I spent 7 months at AIT. Then I went to jump school, became airborne. Then I went to air assault school. Stationed at Fort Campbell. The unit I get to is already deployed. I spend 2 months in Somalia and then come back with those guys. I do combat lifesaver training. Then I do DART training. And they have a Chinook go down in Honduras during hurricane relief. And I go spend 4 months in Honduras. I do armor training. I get restationed to Fort Campbell in the unit fielding and training program where they're building up a new unit. They bring Apaches from Korea over to us and we convert those to longbows. I go to longbow school to learn how to do that. I go to PLDC to become an NCO. We take those helicopters and, well, before that even, I go and spend 6 months in Kuwait. We take those helicopters and we go to Korea. I spend 14 months in Korea. I come back and I'm supposed to be getting out. I've decided that to save my family, I'm going to get out of the military. They initiate a stop loss and they send me to Iraq for a year and a half. To start all of that journey, I kept my Bible with me. I'd take it when I went out on training. But it was hard. It was hard to find time for God amidst everything that I was doing. We'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and do PT and then shower, and then we'd go out and do training, and then by the time I'm done, it's 8 o'clock at night. And I've got to iron my uniform and polish my boots because they've still got to look like they're brand new, or I'm in trouble. And then the next day I'd go do it again and again. And when you're doing training, and I told you guys about all my training, it seemed like that's all I did. When you're doing training, it's 7 days a week. You don't get weekends off. Finding time for God was hard. And I told myself, I know God. We've got a good relationship, so I'm going to be okay. I don't have to read my Bible every day. And I was slipping into that hole. Sliding into that world of darkness, of sin. Pretty soon, I'm not even taking my Bible. And then I'm not praying to God. And I lost who I was, and I lost that relationship with God. Just climbing deeper and deeper into that cave of darkness. That chimney that I talk about, where we lost half our light. That's the first time that your decisions have real consequences. That's that first DUI, that first drug possession, that first time you can't make rent because you gambled away your money. For me, that final deployment in Iraq. Second convoy. I've done a lot of convoys at this point, and every one of them tell you the same thing. If you hit that brake to stop for something that wasn't planned, you're dead. Everybody in that vehicle with you, they're dead. Everybody in every vehicle behind you, they're dead. So you can't hit that brake. I'd heard it over and over and over again. So we're convoying through this little village. I say little village, small town. And there's a dump truck next to me with a bunch of guys in the back of the dump truck. And there's only 3 of us in our truck. So I tell the first guy, the guy in the middle, pop the hatch, keep an eye on them. All along the right-hand side of us, people. The road is just lined with people wanting MREs, wanting water, wanting any kind of gift from us. And so I'm trying to keep an eye on them and keep an eye on these guys and trying to keep the correct distance between me and the person in front of me. And I see a guy on the sidelines lean down and whisper to a little girl and point at our truck. And I'm watching them as he guides her out in front of my truck. And she stands there, brave, with her arm out, trying to stop the truck. My foot comes off the gas, and I want to hit that brake. It's just me, I hit that brake. But there's 150 people in the trucks behind me. And I can't hit the brake. So I do what I can. I turn hard left, hit that dump truck. But it wasn't enough. Hasn't a day gone by in my life that I haven't heard her head hit that bumper? Hasn't been a day go by that I didn't feel the steering wheel jerk when the wheels rolled over the top of her. And I had forgotten God. He wasn't a part of me anymore. So I had nothing to do with that pain. I had nothing to do with all of those emotions because I couldn't give it to someone I didn't know. That was my chimney moment. So I imagined a backpack, and I took all those feelings, all of that pain, and I dropped it in that rucksack. Because if I flip out, if I freak out, it's not just Tommy anymore. Other people depended on my life. So I drove on. I continued the mission. I'm not sure when I lost that second light, whether it was one of the half dozen people I shot, whether it was Jorge when I found him, and, well, the top half of him, and he was still alive. And he pulls my head down close so he can tell me because it's hard for him to speak. And he's telling me about his wife, the daughter that was born just 2 months ago while he's in war, the son that he played catch with. Or maybe it was the time that Jason, my best friend at the time, was killed in an IED. I held his hand while he died, but he never regained consciousness. Maybe it was some of the times I triaged and I had to make decisions about who got to live and who got to die because there weren't enough helicopters to get everybody home. I don't know when that second light out, but sometime during that year and a half I spent in Iraq, that second light went out too. And every time I'd just pick that up and drop it in my rucksack because I didn't have anything else to do with it. Because God was no longer a part of my life. So I carried those burdens for a year and a half. And I told myself, you just gotta hold on till you can get home. You'll be surrounded by the people you love, and you can heal, and you can tell these stories. And I held on. And I dropped it in the backpack over and over, and it got heavy. That rope broke when I got home and found my wife living with another man. She says, "Here, these are your kids, and I don't want anything to do with any of you ever again." And now suddenly I got 2 kids that I haven't seen in 3 years because of 14 months in Korea and 18 months in Kuwait. I saw them for a little 2-month period in between. I don't know them and they don't know me, but I'm all they got now. And I got this rucksack full of pain, full of anger. And I have nowhere to go because I don't have a light, I don't have a rope, and I don't know God. So I curled up in a ball, did the best I could with the kids, and lived life bitter and angry and tired. The voice I heard that snapped me out of it was my dad. And I knew I could come to church. I knew that. I'd heard God whispering in my ear over and over, "Hey, you know what you got to do to fill that emptiness in you. You know who will fill it up. You know who'll take that rucksack away." But if I'm honest with you, I didn't want God to forgive me. I felt like I deserved that pain. I deserved that. I was so guilty for the things I'd done. I was a murderer, a killer. And I didn't want God to forgive me. I didn't want to forgive myself. So I resisted, stupidly held back. And the voice of my dad, every Sunday, "Hey, I think you'd like this Nazarene church. Why don't you come to church with me?" And I'd always have some excuse because I didn't want that burden lifted. Because I deserved what I felt. But eventually he won. And I walked through these doors. And it was only a few times of walking through these doors before I bowed my head and asked God to take those burdens from me. And I'm telling you guys, immediately, that weight was gone. The light was shining. And I was free. 15 years I'd carried that burden, that anger, that hatred inside me. And now it was gone. That is what that cave represents. I've been through it twice, physically and spiritually. And there's just really 3 lessons that I drew from those moments. Number 1 was, you don't know who will bring that word to you. And we as Christians, whether we explore caves, or work as paramedics, or just ride horses, God's got a plan. He's got a plan for you. Are you listening to what He has planned for you? Are you willing to step into the cave even though you're supposed to ride in an ambulance? Are you willing to step into that cave even though all you do is ride horses? The second thing is that God will pursue you everywhere. He wants you to be with Him. And He'll send cowboys and EMTs into the depths of hell if that's what it will take to get you to live with Him. And the last thing I learned is on a poster right up here. John 8:12, I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Jesus was with me in the cave. He walked with me in the deserts of Iraq. There were moments I felt Him keenly. War's loud, and He made all that go away. And I knew sometimes with bullets flying and people I loved dying next to me, I knew everything was going to be okay because I could feel His presence. If you've got darkness in your heart today, come up here. We've got plenty of people that will come pray with you, that'd love to talk to you, that'd love to help guide you out of that darkness of sin. They'd love to guide you. And I'll close just by saying, that this church and these people here and you guys have changed my life again. And if you want your life to be changed, come forward now. Come to this altar and ask God into your heart.